Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. Today's session, Recovery Advocates, the many roles they play and their value. With us today is Jeff Stewart and Bill McGovern, who will be our presenters for today. Just wanted to let you know that this session will be recorded and will be made available on the PG&O YouTube channel within 24 hours. We've also applied for continuing education for the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board and the Ohio Social Work, Marriage, Family Therapist, and whoever else might be within that board. They are having some delays in processing those, so I will send those certificates to you as soon as they are available. So be aware of that. In order to receive your certificate, you do have to have two things completed beforehand. The first is to let us know what your license number is, and that's something that you should have had when you registered. In addition to your license number, we'll also have to have a completed evaluation. So when today closes out, you will have the option to put in that evaluation. So we ask that you please do so. I'm going to go ahead and unpause my screen. As we are getting comfortable with GoToWebinar platform, we will have polls, questions, and the opportunity to raise hands today. So the first thing that we're going to do is open up a poll question. And that poll question should be coming to your screen shortly. And if you are in full screen mode, you may not see this poll question. So minimize your screen a little bit in order for that to pop up. But the quick poll question is, tell us about your pants. Since many of us are socially distancing and providing webinars from our homes, are you wearing soft pants or are you wearing hard pants? And if you say, I'm not quite sure what soft pants or hard pants are, hard pants would be those things, from what I understand, are those that don't have a stretchy waistband, where soft pants have that stretchy waistband for you. So just give us a moment and tell us, are you wearing soft pants or are you wearing hard pants?
Okay. Good to it.
Looks like we have about 85% in, so I give you 5 more seconds to answer that question of whether or not you're wearing soft pants or hard pants. And thank you. We'll close that poll and share those results. And it says 70% of you are wearing soft pants. So hopefully that means that you're prepared to have a comfy session today. For those of you that are wearing hard pants, then I don't know, get up if you need to and stretch your belly. So this is how the polls are going to work. Also wanted to show you the chat or the question section. So if you look over to the question section of your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see a little opportunity to ask those questions. So if you would be so kind as to type in the questions, something that you would like for our poll question to be for our next webinar. So today's webinar's poll question was about soft pants or hard pants. In the question section, just chat in a question that we should have as the poll for the next time. Give you a few moments to do that. Think of good poll questions for our next session. And in addition to doing that, if in the question section you could just type in where you're calling from or dialing in from, that would be great as well. That's from the registration list. We saw that we had many folks from Ohio. Then we have some from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and New Jersey. Scott Anderson, do you like Scott's new look? Scott has flowing hair like Fabio now. Thank you, Mary, for dialing from Bowling Green. Sylvania, thank you, Tori. David's question, how has COVID-19 impacted services? Thank you. Okay, so while you're working over there in that question section, also wanted to draw your attention to raise your hand feature. And the raise your hand is that little green arrow or red arrow to put your hand up and down. And that will let us know if you have any questions, or could be also an engagement thing for us. So thank you so much for taking the time to focus on that. And our panelists today, as I mentioned, we have Jeff Stewart and Bill McGovern. Jess is an advocate and board member of the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio. He serves on multiple committees and has been a speaker at various events, including the 2019 Ohio Conference. He's here today to discuss the importance of advocacy and to find opportunities for possible use of them by those in the prevention and treatment. Also with us today is Bill McGovern. Bill is an advocate with Recovery Resources in Cleveland, Ohio, the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, and Lake County Suicide Prevention Coalition. He is a contributing member of Gam-Anon for the past 6 years, and he is here today to talk about advocacy, its importance, and why he volunteers to spread the message and the dangers of problem gambling. So welcome everyone, particularly our speakers today, Jess and Bill. With that, Jess, I'll turn things over to you.
Thanks, Derek. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today. On behalf of Bill McGovern and I, we're deeply grateful that you want to be a part of this. As stated, I'm Jess Stewart. I'm an individual that was directly impacted by problem gambling for most of my adult life, until I went into inpatient treatment 4 years ago. Not to go into too many details regarding it, other than to say I was introduced to gambling at the age of 6 by my father. And for almost the next 50 years, gambling was either a daily thought or a daily part of my life. Until just prior to going into inpatient treatment, my gambling had reached a peak that resulted in binge gambling of a week at a time. And it was a very difficult period in my life, needless to say, and I had reached a breaking point. Local counseling, I don't believe, was part of an option for me at that time. I felt I needed inpatient treatment, so I began to seek out places that offered that and moved into an inpatient treatment program for 30 days. And I came away from that a changed man. The first slide that you see here is a very oldie. Derek told me about this and said that that actually predated the casinos opening here in Ohio. I told him that that wasn't a problem because my gambling history certainly predated all that. And the reason I chose to add this is pretty adamant because it applies to me personally. Because as it reads, gambling is all fun and games until you borrow money, which I certainly did. In fact, I stole money in order to gamble. Until all you think about is gambling. During your worst moments, that's pretty much, it consumes your life. Until you lie about it, that became the new norm for me when I was in that binge gambling mode. Until you hurt your friends and family. And for me, that was constantly hurting my life, and that wasn't acceptable. So it reached take control of problem gambling before until happens. So I came away from my 30 days in treatment a changed man. Project Turnabout in Granite Falls, Minnesota was the place that I received my treatment, and they slowly helped me to change from the inside out. They helped me to identify the issues that caused me to think the way I was thinking. I literally had to change my entire thought processes where it concerned gambling, and they helped me to identify triggers, reasons that I chose to go gambling. So I made it my immediate mission after leaving there to become involved in advocacy and to be a voice for those who would fall into this illness. I educated myself on the issue and other underlying issues that are often associated with it. And it helped me to understand my own situations better and the mental health issues that I was dealing with, which were PTSD and depression. As it turns out, I used gambling as a coping mechanism for some of them. My mother passed away at the age of 17, or I was 17 at the time. And that was the beginning of some depression for me. It was difficult. I tried to bury myself in work and other things, but it reached the level that gambling became my substitute and led me down a path that reached culmination 4 years ago. Many believe that an advocate's role is limited and that it makes little impact or difference in scope. I believe our role is actually limited only by those who seek to limit them and the difference that they can make. There are no limits to what one can do and achieve if they put time and effort into a cause, especially one in which you believe in, and I believe in this one. As an advocate, I choose to seek out opportunities rather than wait for them. As a problem gambler myself, I chose to shed anonymous and anonymity for action, regardless of the consequences. When I give talks and tell my story of addiction, I leave nothing out. Some people would frown upon it because my story is a dark one. I was incarcerated. I spent 3 years in prison. So there are those who say, well, you're a convicted felon, you're a con, you're, this. That's okay. I just kind of brush it off and move on because that does not define me. That's not who I am today. So what do I actually do as an advocate? Well, many believe that we show up at an event or a conference once or twice a year, and that's basically all we do. So let's just compare that for a moment to these facts. I was actually a lead speaker at a breakout session at the 2020 Ohio Problem Gambling Conference that we just had in February. At that same conference, I did a television interview at the same event for NBC4 in Columbus. I've spoken on 3 conference panels at the 2019 Ohio Conference. I've been part of panels at seminars and symposiums. I've spoken to community groups in Ohio and in 3 other states. I did a video and testimonial for a church recovery message. I've written multiple op-eds for newspapers, written letters to the Ohio governor, both United States senators from Ohio, members of the House in Ohio and the Senate, all on gambling matters and issues. I joined the PG&O board of directors and serve on the policy committee. And all of this has been in just over the last year and isn't all inclusive, just the most relevant. Next slide, Derek. So why do I do it? I do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's an issue that resonates with me. I care about people and their well-being. I want to do whatever I can to make sure that Ohio has the best system of care possible and adequate resources to care for problem gamblers. And I also want to make certain that anytime new gambling expansion comes into Ohio, that there is additional funding made available in that legislation specifically allocated to gambling prevention and treatment for those who will be impacted by it. Advocacy, the definition of advocacy is the act of pleading or arguing in favor of something, such as a cause, idea, or policy. In essence, advocacy is actively supporting something important to you. There is nothing more important to me than the issue of problem gambling. I don't want to see anyone fall into the same pattern that I did. That's why I do what I do. There's a misconception by some in prevention and treatment field that advocates are more of a liability than an asset, that advocates cannot help you in any way. I respectfully disagree with those that hold such an opinion. You're certainly entitled to that belief, but I would ask that you would just be open-minded to my argument on that position. And I disagree for 3 reasons. Because someone such as myself actually brings certain specific advantages. Number 1 is lived experience. Please don't undervalue that particular element. Problem gamblers prefer to talk with other problem gamblers about their problems. That's why GA is as prevalent as it is in society. You can ask people in GA. I did that as part of some personal study and found that 84% would prefer to speak to a gambler in recovery as a first contact rather than a gambling counselor. That floored me. I understood it to a point, but that still floored me. So I asked them why that was. and I got a bevy of different answers. Everything from comfort level to pride, ability to be honest with, trust, and etc. In summary, they were more than willing to be open, truthful, and admit the depth of their gambling problems with another problem gambler. Although I would be a total stranger to them, just as you would, that common experience mattered greatly to them. The second advantage many advocates can bring to the table over you is the element of available time and accessibility. We have the ability to fill the gaps of nights and weekends and holidays to speak with or communicate with individuals who might prefer talking with someone with lived experiences. Derek, if you could put up the next slide. Advocacy in all its forms seeks to ensure that people, particularly those who are most vulnerable in society, are able to have their voice heard on issues that are important to them, defend and safeguard their rights, and have their views and wishes genuinely considered when decisions are being made about their lives. One of the things for me personally, when I was a member of GA, which I don't attend GA today. I actually attend a different 12-step recovery program that is faith-based, is that comfort level, the ability to have their views and wishes considered when they're making basically life decisions that are going to affect them. They draw comfort in being able to talk to someone who maybe has gone that route already. So I'll come back to that more on that in a little bit. I want to talk about now the third specific advantage, and that would be political influence. I believe that we have great potential as advocates to impact those of our legislators. PG&O in general has good, a very good position because of their neutrality on gambling issues. They're not for and they're not against. It might surprise you as someone who is a compulsive gambler the way that I was, that I actually am not anti-gambling. I do carry that neutral position. However, that does not mean that I will not advocate for prevention and treatment and for funds to be allocated, because they need to be there. But legislators, there are some that are very hard-hearted. Some like to be, they're data-driven. They like to hear statistics and see charts and graphs. Others, not so much. They would rather just, have the testimony come before them. You have proponents, you have opponents, you have interested party. But having someone with lived experience talk to a legislator, even those with the hardest of hearts, can't necessarily ignore that. So I like to say that I like to give them a dose of reality by telling them my story. And I think that would even soften the hardest of hearts. It still might not be enough. So I sort of give them a second injection, and to basically point out and say, well, Senator or Congressman, this may not impact your immediate family. It may not impact you or your wife or your children. But what if it did impact, say, a very close friend or a grandchild or a great-grandchild? We know the statistics. So if you're in a hearing room with 30 individuals and you look at statistics of 1 in 10, then there's potentially 3 individuals in that room that at some point would have an individual that could reach an addictive nature when it comes to gambling. So what legacy do you want to leave on this issue? Do you want to be able in the future to tell your grandchild or great-grandchild or close friend that you fought to protect them, to provide for their care, or just do nothing and let the chips fall where they may? If anything, that would make them potentially think about the choice that is before them when it comes to legislation on problem gambling. And I think advocates play a very unique role potentially in reaching our legislators on issues pertaining to that. Advocates cannot replace what those in prevention and treatment do, nor are we qualified to counsel individuals. What we can do and are willing to do is serve as a pathway to getting new clients into your offices and your agencies. The helpline is, of course, available 24/7, but the staff who take those calls are rarely, if ever, someone with lived experience of problem gambling. They can offer comforting and encouraging words, but even that is not a certainty. And I say that as someone who has done quality assurance calls to the problem gambling helpline on numerous occasions. As I said earlier, the list of things I do as an advocate were not all inclusive. This is just one more role I play for the good of those who might call. And I take this very seriously because I'm looking at it from a perspective, not only from the prevention and treatment side, that we're doing and offering the best resources that we can, but also from the problem gambler's perspective. And it's easy for me to play that role when I call because I lived it. And most of the time, those taking the calls are outstanding, absolutely outstanding. But there have been a couple that, had I been a problem gambler in crisis, looking for help, the outcome would have been somewhat alarming. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that in one call. And first, you kind of have to go with the mindset of that gambler who's making that call at that time. The fact that they're reaching out to a helpline, they're in crisis. Their thought process, who knows what they're thinking? Their mental health may be well unstable at that point. They may be contemplating suicide. We just don't know the situation until they get more into the call. So on this first one that I'm using as an example, I was placed on hold for 5 minutes while the person on the other end was checking with their supervisor to find additional resources available. I don't think being placed on hold was the right thing to do. A second example was the response that I got from the person who took my call, in the fact that she found no help in the county that I was calling in for. And she was kind of floored by that. Well, just imagine what a problem gambler would think who is calling into the helpline for help. And you have the person on the other end say, well, oh my goodness, we don't have any resource to help you in this county, and the closest one is like 45 minutes away. Not exactly something they would probably want to hear. And one other call that I did, I literally had to pry answers out of the individual on the other end. I had to literally ask them questions to try to get information to be able to find help. And they suggested, a website. So I said, okay. So after we finished the call, I got on the website and I clicked in, and there was actually nothing there, and then you had to click to another website and another website. And by the time I finally did find what they were basically suggesting, a problem gambler in crisis, they would have been off that by then. They would have been so frustrated that they just would have completely given up. And that's just not acceptable to someone that's in crisis. So that's why Ohio actively is seeking better solutions. And I'm going to talk about one of those here very shortly. Those of us with lived experience, both direct or indirect, can bring insight from the perspective of both sides, whether it's from the prevention treatment side as well as the problem gambling side. So having someone with the ability to view and think through the eyes of a problem gambler and knowing how they think, I believe is a huge asset. That in part is why I believe advocates can be a benefit to you and what you already bring to the table. We provide our personal stories, our lived experiences, ability to sponsor, increased accessibility to go alongside your resources, your data, your training, and your education. My goal for any type of partnership with an individual or an agency would be to assist getting more clients to you, to build a stronger support network, to collaborate as needed, to stigmatize this illness and the language, and to educate all who are willing to listen. We are in an ever-changing environment. This pandemic that we're facing, it certainly shows that. But I'm very excited about the possibilities of the warm transfer project. Anything that gets more direct help to a problem gambler quicker is a good thing. I do, however, see a gap, and I've made my concerns known, and it will take some time to close it to my satisfaction, as this is a concern I view from the standpoint of a problem gambler's perspective. And here's what I mean by that. Warm transfer would put a caller to the problem gambling helpline directly in touch with the gambling counselor if they request it on nights and weekends and holidays. And that is a great thing. More direct help to a licensed counselor who can diffuse a crisis situation potentially almost immediately is a great thing. No doubt, no doubt. My concern lies in what happens next. How likely is it that this individual gets an appointment the next day? What if it's 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or a week down the road? In this case, time is not our friend. A problem gambler calling the helpline is a last step for many. They are in crisis and likely emotionally unstable. The immediate crisis might be eased in the interactions, but will it hold until the appointment? Each day that passes before that individual is seen, the likelihood of them going to that appointment decreases exponentially. And that's just the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Something needs to occur in between to improve those percentages. The solution can be simple enough from my view, but I expect most of you on this call would want no part of it. Are you personally willing to follow up with these potential clients between the call and the appointment? How about give them your cell phone number or email address to stay in touch if needed? Once they have spoken to you, they are not going to want to be passed around like a hat. And I speak from direct personal experience on this. However, they would consider talking with someone with lived experience in the interim. I know that for a fact as well. Even if you were someone so dedicated to this cause that you would be willing, you might not have enough free time to do it, especially if you happen to be the on-call counselors on a given weekend with this new project. You might have to handle numerous calls and simply just wouldn't be able to do it. Regular contact with current or potential clients are important. Once a week or twice a month is rarely sufficient. Having a dedicated person who can touch base with clients in between appointments would keep the momentum moving forward and would also have a positive effect on the client. they get a real sense that your agency truly cares about their well-being. You might be shocked to know that 4 years out of treatment, I'm still in touch with the staff for my treatment center up in Minnesota. I even asked them to consider sponsoring my session at the 2020 conference, which was an investment of, I believe, $125. They sent a representative, paid for them to set up a booth, paid her airfare, her hotel, her meals. They spent 6 times what they needed to, all because they care about me as an individual who was in their program. That act showed me so much to someone they owe absolutely nothing to. Just this week, they asked me to speak to a group at their center and other alumni joining through Zoom on May 29th. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity because I owe them my life. They gave me my life back. I am who I am today because of them. For those of you that are taking part today to get CEUs for your continuing education, I want to let you in on a little secret. Problem gamblers need CEUs too. They need compassion, empathy, understanding, consideration, encouragement, and uplifting. My interest in gambling advocacy is not just for those who suffer with gambling issues. I also have a vested interest in each of you as individuals in whatever agency you might be a part of, because you are the hope of those afflicted with this illness. Your dedication is the reason that Ohio is by far one of the best states in the nation for treating problem gambling. And I'm excited that Ohio is also starting to consider options regarding a future inpatient treatment facility. We are all aware that the question is not will gambling expand, but when. Next slide, Derek. In closing, let me read this first. Being an advocate can have far-reaching positive impacts on the public's health, providing policymakers with the information they need to make decisions, and in turn influence legislation. While the legislative process can be long and complex, effective advocacy does not have to be. And it doesn't. It can be as simple as reaching out and writing a letter, writing an op-ed, just talking to someone about a cause or an issue that you're passionate about. And that is something that I think all of us, not just advocates, need to do more of. At the Ohio conference, I talked about upcoming gambling expansion of sports wagering. The current pandemic has removed that from the conversation for now. All college and pro sports are shut down, and casinos and racinos in Ohio are still closed. But that doesn't mean that gambling isn't taking place. The Ohio lottery is still available, and many gamblers have shifted to online poker for now. In the first month of the lockdown, Global Poker revealed a 43% online increase in the United States, including a 255% jump in new players. Ladies and gentlemen, a storm is coming. Once the casinos and racinos are allowed to reopen, there's going to be a surge. Just like the pandemic, there's going to be a surge. I'm not only concerned about just those who already have gambling issues. I'm concerned about individuals from 21 and up who have seen their finances crumble, or they've had to use their savings to make ends meet and have little left. I'm concerned about those that are behind on their mortgage, their car payments, their utilities, their medical bills, and so forth. I'm concerned that they will take what money they have left and put it all on a color or a number or a hand. This COVID-19 pandemic is creating a new pandemic in its midst, a mental health one. Since March, there has been a 34% jump in prescriptions for anti-anxiety medications, a 20% jump in prescriptions for antidepressants. There has been a sharp rise across the country in calls to suicide helplines. Healthcare workers are being traumatized. Using the city of Milwaukee as an example, they have seen a 54% spike in overdoses and an 80% increase in suicides or attempted suicides in the last month. We need to be prepared for a surge in calls, in clients, and yes, maybe even suicides. If you are someone who is in prevention and treatment, treat every caller or client in the chair across from you in the manner you would want if the situation was reversed. Although you might never know it, that conversation just might be the one that saves someone's life. Thank you for being here today. Derek, back to you.
Thank you, Jess. And Jess's information is on the screen right now if you'd like to reach out to him with his phone number and email, and we can also provide it in the follow-up information as well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask your questions in the Go to Webinar Control Panels question section. We don't have any questions currently, so we'll move things over to Bill. Bill, to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jess. Hello and welcome. My name is Bill McGovern, and I'm a Gam-Anon member and advocate in a recovery journey from personal loss to problem gambling. I'd like to thank Jess Stewart, Recovery Resources, Gam-Anon, Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for the opportunity to speak with you today. But especially thank you for being here today. I'm here today because it's important to me to share with you my experience and why. Derek, I'd like to have the first poll. So if you'd all participate in the poll, please, what is your primary role? I'd like to know, who's in the audience out there.
And that should be up on your screen. What is your primary role? The options are prevention, treatment, recovery support, operator, or regulator. We have 5 more seconds to top in your poll. And it looks like 45% of respondents are in prevention, 36% treatment, 9% are recovery support and operators.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that information. So this will help me to direct my story to you. So can't change the past, but it was the summer of 2013 that my wife Andrea and I learned of our son's problem gambling. It was so sudden and severe that before we could react, he had attempted suicide based on activity in problem gambling. We may never recover. Our lives were changed forever. We quickly learned about Gamblers Anonymous and Gam-Anon. We met many very good resources, professionals, support groups, addicts, advocates, and survivors. We had been familiar with 12-step programs and the benefits of those programs in the past. We became immersed in the program along with our son, Mike Hurricane McGovern. He worked his program and we worked our program. It is life-changing. He earned his 30-day PIN. He earned his 90-day PIN. We kept to our program and supported him in his. Then the wheels came off. A series of most unfortunate threatening conditions changed for Mike that Christmas of 2013. His program and relationship spiraled out of control. He cut off contact with family, friends, stopped going to GA, went to the casino, binge gambled, and on January 17, 2014, at age 28, completed suicide, practically in front of us at our home that cold, rainy evening, because he had lost hope in his support network, and the pain he had endured for the previous 3 weeks was much too much to bear any longer. We didn't see it coming. We believed in the program. It was working, or so it seemed. We had not been prepared to face the facts and statistics that 5 in 100 gamblers are problem gamblers, and 1 in those 5 will complete suicide. Staggering numbers. What could I do? How do I continue? Can I continue? Why would I want to? My wife and I, we learned quickly what impact the loss of Mike, a problem gambler, had on us and our community. His huge number of friends and acquaintances, despite the fog of my grief and the wrestling match for the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, guilt, despair, and acceptance, I had to act, stay busy, embrace the condition, and engage with the support offered. Thank you, God, for all the advocates that supported us. We'll pause here again for our second poll. Question here on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being high, how important are advocates in identifying and curtailing problem gambling to you?
Yeah, 5 more seconds to speak now or forever hold your peace.
I'll add Jeopardy music next time.
Perfect.
And the answers are very important. Thank you very much. All very, very high. So this is great. We have an audience that appreciates the role of an advocate. So Derek, if you could pop up slide number 4, return to slide number 4, I'll return to the Gam-Anon program. Not because we had a problem gambler in the adjacent room anymore, not because it was my turn to live out step 12. Despite my tragic story, others needed to hear what problem gambling can lead to. Offer hope in the face of staggering odds, if only to change or save the life of one other person. I can't change my past, but I certainly can be a vocal advocate to others facing strange, unfamiliar territory and point them to the network of groups and professionals available in the community. I didn't fully appreciate the art of advocacy, so I had to investigate it. I started with Webster's Dictionary, definition of advocate. Public support for or recommendation of a particular cause or policy. Not very satisfactory, so I had to dig a little deeper. I found advocacy can be defined as the act of arguing or pleading for something, most commonly a cause, idea, or movement. Citizen advocacy is the term used to define the action of a citizen understanding unpaid long-term support for a vulnerable person, ensuring that that vulnerable person's interests and opinions are heard. This really spoke to me. But I kept digging. And another definition, the purpose of advocacy is to promote or reinforce a change in policy, program, or legislation, as Jess mentioned. Rather than providing support directly to clients or users of services, advocacy aims at winning support from others, creating a supportive environment. There are three types of advocacy: self-advocacy, individual advocacy, and systems advocacy. This made total sense from the madness I found myself in. I could do this. Plead for support to the vulnerable. Act in their best interest. Give them a safe, non-judgmental support environment till the compulsion passed, and they might be able to return to their support or recovery program. I knew firsthand the incidental impact problem gambling can have on the wider community. I wouldn't be silent. I felt compelled to share the story and the path to recovery. Drop the anonymous and be brave, almost fearless of any stigma. Could there be worse consequences than losing a child, a friend, a family member? Yes, there is. Not being outspoken and bottling it up doesn't improve the situation for anyone. It's a hard story, but it is that opportunity to educate and collaborate. I take my message into the community, into my workplace, into my parish, into my family and friends. Most important to me in this advocacy vocation is to remind them that they are not alone. Recovery is possible and that treatment works. So, on to dispelling the myths and misconceptions. As an audience of care professionals, counselors, social workers, gaming operators, researchers, policymakers, recovery advocates, if you found yourself at risk, who would you reach out to? What would prevent you from reaching out? Having been active in Chrysalis, a support group to our Adams board here in Lake County, Ohio, the Compassionate Friends, a national online meeting support group, Franklin County Loss, American Foundation Suicide Prevention, Gam-Anon, the Catholic Men's Fellowship, I have heard many express their concerns about stigma and the fear and anxiety that it imposes and actually blocks and prevents them from getting needed support or being allowed to grieve, openly express their emotions. I was and continue to be astonished at how the sympathetic ear of a trusted advocate can free that person, that go-to person when there wasn't a scheduled meeting or the medical appointment isn't for 2 more days. The meds won't be available for pickup for a few more hours. The helpline isn't available until Monday morning. That's changing. An advocate isn't necessarily a paid professional, and often they don't even have to speak to lend support. They're often that bridge in low periods till the next professional steps are available. The benefit of an advocate could be enough to halt the compulsive gambler temporarily, or even be life-saving if they are planning to harm themselves or someone else. What would joining forces look like? In my experience, joining forces are like stitching a patchwork quilt to the various resources in my network circle, radiating outward as each patch extended to more resources from its network. It was all about community for me, the public ones, the professionals, religions, care providers, first responders, family, friends, work colleagues. I found AFSP and recovery resources and others to be very supportive in developing my advocacy. I thank the Adams Board of Lake County and the Suicide Prevention Coalition that was formed here, helped us to develop and deliver my personal story. The Compassionate Friends was there for shared experiences and peer support. AFSP Out of the Darkness program allowed us to channel our resources toward education and awareness advocacy. Resource Recovery and Gam-Anon was supportive and another outlet for the personal story, for access to data and communication towards destigmatized language. PGNO and Helpline helped us to assist with monitoring and evaluation and action. And the Franklin County Loss introduced us to national and local resources with lived experience and access to those in need. These are only a few of the steps in my journey that have led to getting professionals connected with clients, building and strengthening the grassroots support network, connecting for collaboration in education, in programs, and in funding. Destigmatized language, words matter. There's a small program by PG&O here about what hurts, what helps. A single word can have a tremendous impact. Educate interested parties, and we all should be interested. In my case, first responders. My wife and I, through the efforts of our initial advocacy, were able to raise funds and put on programs for first responders to those who are considering attempting suicide, self-harm. Importance of setting expectations of what happens in the first hour, in the first day, in the first 3 days. Those 72 hours are critical. And the first week, that initial fragile time. Derek, if we could have poll number 3. So my question to you is, do you believe advocates have a role in addressing problem gambling? I need to work on my tone.
And we have 70% of the votes in, so we'll give you 3 seconds more to finish out then. Thanks to everybody who participated. And here are your results.
Oh, excellent. We're a uniform family here. Thank you. So Derek, if you could switch me out to slide 6 as I wrap up. So in closing, for me, that first contact, how will that go? What if they have to wait? Am I able to address the right issue? Is it in the addiction or is it in self-harm? I see my role as the neighborhood patrol. I'm credible, I'm easy to reach, I'm accessible, I'm visible, approachable, non-judgmental. Although this might be a little bit scary, you know, in these COVID times, I got my ears on, I got my eyes on, but no worries, I'll be safe around you. I have limited experience with recognizing the signs, but I will be outspoken on the topic, #be the voice. It gives me a sense of purpose, and in another sense, a traffic cop able to direct a person or family in need towards the best resource for their issue or situation. Having lived that, I become a respected individual that they can trust, that things will be okay and they're not alone. So in summary, in my talk with you today, it was a little bit about my journey to advocacy. #that, be the voice. In dispelling myths and misconceptions. #stomp the stigma. Talk about it, it's important. Joining forces. #join the conversation. And then next steps. That initial contact is critical, it's crucial. Those next steps, #hope helps heal. Sorry, I stole that from Kevin Hines, a suicide survivor. In small ways, we all make a difference. I thank you again for your time in attending today. You are making a difference. Together, we're making a difference. One person at a time, one day at a time. So bless you. For more information, I include some resources, as Derek has some resources to share. PG&O has been a tremendous resource that has helped me in my journey and companionship with others. So thank you. I return you now to Derek and any questions that you may have in the remaining minutes.
Great, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Jess. If you do have questions, please ask it in the question section of your GoToWebinar navigation panel. Doesn't look like we have any questions so far, but just a couple comments saying thank you for sharing your story and thank you for all that you do. As a reminder, the CEUs have been submitted to both the Ohio Chemical Dependency Professionals Board and the Ohio Counselor, Social Worker, and Marriage and Family Therapist Board. I had to write that down, otherwise I wouldn't remember. As soon as those are approved, we will send those certificates out to folks, provided that you provided your license or certificate number at registration and complete the evaluation that will come up as we conclude. If you're not able to complete the evaluation at the conclusion, you'll also get a little follow-up email that will have that evaluation link. Jess or Bill, do you have any final thoughts before we close out today?
No, again, I just want to say thank you for all those who attended today and your participation. I was glad to see that it seems that through our advocacy work that maybe we're starting to move the needle, and those in prevention and treatment are starting to realize that advocates can indeed play a role in not only assisting you, but in just sharing our voices in this fight against addiction.
I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. The journey continues, and God bless you all.
Well, thank you again, both Jess and Bill. And if you're looking for more events, go to pgnohio.org/events. On Monday, we have the Ohio Problem Gambling Services Stakeholder Call. So if you're interested in knowing what we're working on in prevention, treatment, intervention services in Ohio during this COVID time, that call will be from 1 to 2 p.m. And then we've got our Changing the Game Youth Gaming and Gambling webinar that will be hosted by Prevention Action Alliance, include Julie Hines with the Oregon Council, that is my counterpart in Oregon, and Julie is a phenomenal presenter and has so much great information to share. Again, those and other events are available at pgnohio.org/events. Final comment is that this session, once again, has been recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, hopefully within the next 24 hours. Just depends on how much time it takes to get that converted over. Thank you again so much, everyone, for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you next time. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.